bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? Kicking off a brand new week. Today is Monday, October 28th, 2024. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Happy Halloween, everybody. It is Halloween week. And yeah, right? Here we go. Now, check out this week that we have coming up on Fade to Black. Tonight, the one and only Mike Ricksecker is with us. Tonight, we're going to be talking about portals and Stargates. He's got a new book out. We'll be talking about that and much more. It's Mike Ricksecker. And tomorrow night, Kevin J. Anderson is here. One of the greatest science fiction writers in the world. He's published 190 books. He has written stuff for Star Wars, the TV series, Dune, Part 1 and Part 2, and a whole lot more. It is going to be an absolutely amazing night tomorrow night with Kevin J. Anderson. Then Wednesday night, Jim Harold is here. He's with us every Halloween. And just like last year, the show was called Halloween Campfire. We're going to do all of that Wednesday night with Jim Harold. And then Thursday night, Judica Isles is with us. It's our Fade to Black Halloween special. Yeah. And there might be some costumes involved. What does that mean? Well, you have to wait until Thursday. Yeah, there you go. All right. I've got 4 major events coming up. Everybody knows in a couple of weeks, I'm going down to Peru and Bolivia again this year with Brian Forrester. That is November 15th through the 27th. And you can visit Brian's website below and check out all of the amazing tours that he's got going on all year long and throughout 2025. And then right after that, the Conscious Life Expo. That's right. I'm hosting again this year. I think this is year number 10. For me to be hosting, I think that's the number. It's pretty close. February 7th through the 10th, 2025. Mike Ricksecker is going to be there. Yeah. I'm doing a couple of things with Mike. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then links for that are below. Tickets go on sale November 3rd. Right after that is Rise of the Guardians, March 29th and 30th, 2025 in Sedona, Arizona. And the links for that are below too as well. Very excited about that event going to Sedona. And then I'm heading back to the Midwest. Mike and I were just talking about the Midwest right before the show tonight for the Contact Modalities Expo. That's May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2025 in Delavan, Wisconsin at Delavan Lake. An amazing resort, an amazing group of speakers, and we're adding some more. Okay, so as that gets done, I'll let everybody know. But it is just going to be an amazing event. I'm going back to the Midwest. You know what that means for me, right? Cracker Barrel, Waffle House, if they have them in Wisconsin, White Castle, they better have those in Wisconsin. Yeah, I can't wait. It's all cheese and gravy. I can't wait. The Midwest Contact Modalities Expo. Tickets go on sale for that November 1st. The links are below. All right. Now, I'm going to let everybody know that the World Series is going on. It's Game 3 tonight in New York. It's the Dodgers of Los Angeles, the Dodgers. And so there you go. It is the top of the 6th. LA is up 3-0 over New York, and the 6th inning just started. Dodgers at bat. Okay, so I've got that live in the background. If anything breaks during the show, you're here with us. So look, this is a live show, and as a public service announcement, I'll break into the show if anything crazy happens. Okay, right now the Dodgers. The Dodgers All right, here we go. Tonight, Mike Ricksecker is with us talking about two of my favorite subjects, portals and Stargates. And his new book is called Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. We'll be talking about his new book and much more tonight. And, the concepts between Stargates and other things in pop culture and what is a Stargate? What is a portal, right? We talk about this stuff all the time, vortexes, time slips, and we're going to do all of that and much more tonight with Mike. He is a big social media guy and multimedia guy. So all of his links are below, MikeRicksecker.com and the ConnectedUniversePortal.com. Those links are below on our website and throughout social media. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, my favorite NSA agent, Mike. Hey. I was joking about this earlier. Your Halloween costume is perfect tonight.
Right, all in black.
Yeah, dressed as a secret agent. Hey, right. Let me ask you something. The other day, it's a weird way to start out the show, but I love doing this with you because I can. I was watching a movie, or maybe it was a TV series, over the weekend, and husband and wife, right? Okay, and the wife is like a black ops secret agent operative of NRO or NSS or something, right? That's what she does. Her husband is a chef, okay, like a celebrity chef. Turns out he's a secret agent, right, from Russia, and she never knew that. But when he gets kidnapped, she goes to find him, and what ensues, right? So all of that's going down. She's got to save the world in the meantime. But anyway, so she's at the secret underground lair, and her husband is tied up in a room, and she's going through, and she bumps into, in a gunfight, her next door neighbors.
Oh, jeez.
And in the movie, now it turns out her neighbors
are all spies.
Agents. Yeah, everybody's spies. And in the beginning of the movie, they were like, hey, come over for dinner this weekend. I'm busy. She was like blowing them off. But that was the setup for the reveal later that her neighbors were spies surveilling them. Anyway, so for you, did you have a cover job? Did you tell your neighbors that you had a plumbing business, a carpeting company or something?
So I lived on base housing, so you didn't really have to really disguise that so much. So it was Fort Meade, Maryland. Now you had some people that were Army personnel that were working, some other operations there that was part of Fort Meade. NSA is on the southern end of Fort Meade. Right. And so, the Army personnel that were within the base housing, they may have been NSA. They may have just been regular Fort Meade personnel, but I was Air Force. So they pretty much all knew that I was working somewhere in the building. Now, there were times that there are places hidden in plain sight. And, if I worked in we say the building, but really it's 4 buildings. And when I went there, I would dress in my regular, U.S. Air Force uniform. But if I had to go off site, we would dress up in these suits, and we ended up at these locations that, it might have been a small business park or just a little strip mall or something like that. And essentially it was a front. And, it's next to all these other little businesses and offices and these sorts of things. And you walk in, and there's a nice little reception area, a woman working a desk, and you sign in, and she gives you a little badge, and you go through the door, and then there's like this vault back there, and you go in and you do your thing.
Yeah. Straight out of the movies, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Those places are legitimate. Absolutely.
Wow. And how common is that? I would suppose, well, I don't know. Is it a Pandora's box thing? They're everywhere, or is it, kind of rare? I often wonder, there are a lot of dental You know, a lot of dentist offices. You know,
You never know. Some of those. I mean, I wasn't privy to where they all were. I mean, there was a couple that I got into, so I knew of those particular ones because those were
Okay,
ones that our
what was the
division
okay?
had to.
Okay,
Yeah.
you won't get in any trouble. Nobody will know. What was the business type? What was the sign outside?
Oh, it was like a lawyer's office. Yeah.
Get out of here! God, I really.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Really. Really.
Yeah. So
Okay. All right.
like the first
I don't
time I
want to.
watched, what was the first Captain America movie? And they're going there. What is it? Downtown New York City. They're walking into maybe it was a bookshop or whatever, and all of a sudden back behind there is like where they got everything, and it's like that is really what it's like. Seriously.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
I don't want to get you in any trouble, but
Right.
and so if I step out of bounds, I step out of bounds. But it has to be that way, and I would assume not only the citizens of this country, but any country would have to assume that stuff is going on. And you want that to go on because people are doing their jobs. Right. You don't not want that to go on. That's the opposite of being safe. Right. But the whole trip is, man, I never see anybody coming out of that dentist office. There's no kids. Is it adults only? I don't know. But yeah, I've thought about that so much. And okay, all right. It's when you say one last thing, and again, if you're giving up national security secrets, just let me know.
Yeah, I know where the total line.
Okay, when you say suited up, what do you mean? What's a suit?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you're kind of we don't have seersuckers anymore. It's your basic seersucker suit. I mean, we used that term back in the 70s and 80s. You just get in a basic suit and tie. I think back then I did have a black suit, and I can't remember what color. I had a whole tie collection back then. I still have the collection, but I just choose a tie that was professional looking and put on the black suit, and yeah, you go in. You just
okay, all right,
yeah,
okay. All right.
I can't tell you what they were doing back there, but yeah.
Well, now let's stay on Fort Meade for a second because of the subject that we're talking about tonight. Fort Meade, the Stargate project, right? And and remote viewing.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about Stargates and portals tonight.
Right.
And I often thought that Stargate was the perfect name for a remote viewing program, as opposed to what's the Immaculate Constellation, this new program that's supposedly out with reverse. Yeah, that's a bad name. That's a bad. I'm not buying that name. But Project Stargate, that's a cool name for a project like that. Was that anything that you were aware of when you were stationed there?
Yeah, what's interesting about Project Stargate, so when it was in full operation, it had a lot of different names because there were different segments of people doing different things. And so it was in the early 90s that they decided to lump all of those different project titles under Project Stargate. So it became like the all-encompassing project over all these smaller ones. And I ended up there at Fort George G. Meade in Maryland, and they officially now... a lot of people suspect it was still going on afterward and may even still be going on today. It officially closed shop in the summer of 1995. I was stationed there, basically got into town November 1995. So they closed that up just before I got there. And I didn't really have anything to do with that. But I mean, you heard things about it. People talked, and kind of water cooler sort of stuff about different projects and things that were going on there. So, it was quite interesting getting there and learning, what is this Stargate thing? Because it was just after the Stargate movie came out, but, two totally different concepts. But yeah, it definitely had the cool name. And the idea of this remote viewing, I was a little bit foreign to that. I mean, I was 21 years old, so that was a bit of a newer concept to me at the time, but very, very fascinating. Absolutely.
Are there you've been away from it for a little bit now.
Yeah.
I don't know how free you are to speculate or to say things, but let me ask you this. Do you believe that there are exotic programs like that still in play?
Well, yeah, there were back then, and I have no doubt that there are a lot of exotic programs like that, special access programs and things like that that are in play today. And we hear other people coming forward with those things. So, yeah, it would not be surprising to me. I mean, I knew of a few things back then that were going on that, of course, I can't talk about. So, yeah, nothing.
What did
surprises me.
okay? I know you can't talk about them, but what did they involve? Was it the supernatural and the paranormal, the mind, or off-world stuff? Stuff that paranormal outside of the normal.
Right. So, I mean, like I guess I could say, I knew they were, on the search for extraterrestrial life, things definitely off planet, those sorts of things. And I wasn't really too involved in that sort of thing at all. My department was more of supporting the spies. So, like, all the stuff that happened with Edward Snowden, when he basically had to flee the country and all that, I'm kind of scratching my head like, we were. This is news. We were sort of doing that, but audio instead of video, So that was always really surprising to me what happened with him. But I kind of poked around a little bit, and curiosity, right? You're in this big building, they call it the Puzzle Palace and all that, and you want to know what's going on there, especially when at that time, okay, you have movies like Stargate, Independence Day, things like that are coming out at that time, and it makes you curious. So you start poking around a little bit and discover, oh, there are some of these different things that are going on around here.
Now, again, we're going to be talking about Stargates and portals tonight, and certainly in ancient history, a little bit of Atlantis and some ancient Egypt. But today, the ideas about getting across the universe and arriving and circumventing these vast distances between stars, because we look at everything in such a conventional sense, and nuts and bolts aircraft or spacecraft. But it's kind of evolved, and Einstein has come into play, and the subject of faster than light travel, and how would you pull that off? Well, if one of the ways to do that is the ideas behind the Einstein-Rosen Bridge, or Stargate, or wormhole, where you're essentially folding space and going from one point to the other instantaneous. You're not even really traveling, right? And so that would fall under, I would say, the NSA, the NRO, their satellites, their data collection, their sensor systems that are out there. And if they are arriving here via something like that, the agencies would be aware of it, right?
Yeah, that's something that they would closely monitor. So, like, Fermilab here a couple years ago posted some results of experiments that they were doing in the lab, a quantum environment in which they declared that, hey, we created a wormhole in the lab on the quantum level. And this was essentially creating, again, in a quantum environment, two very small black holes, and connected them via a tunnel and sent a message through. So this is really our beginnings of our modern era of creating something like a Stargate or something like that. So yeah, an organization like NSA and these other government organizations would certainly be very, very interested in what they are doing with that, because if they can create that mode of transportation on the quantum level, okay, what can we do to create that across the universe, across the cosmos? And yeah, it's that idea, like you were saying, of creating that Einstein-Rosen bridge, and again, that concept of folding space and time and connecting 2 points via some sort of tunnel. And that's the trick. How do you fold space and time? And the big question, of course, is, are there other intelligent life forms out there, other advanced civilizations that have already done that, that are doing that today, that have, millions or even billions of years of technology over us, that they've had the jump start for, billions of years. And it's certainly very possible.
Now, with that knowledge, we have Arrow, we have
Mhm.
Congress, we have the Senate all asking for this information, and the Department of Defense in the middle of it, of course. And the sharing of this information and what is being collected. If there is a Stargate transportation system or portal that one of the agencies is aware of, would they share that information with Arrow, or would Arrow have to go and pull teeth back to the dentist office, right?
Yes, back to the dentist office. Yeah, the government organizations, even with each other, are very hesitant to share that type of information. You have a very select few people who basically like know it all. So it's very, very compartmentalized. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, but there's a basically a central figure, maybe call it the mind or whatever, that knows what the two are doing, but one doesn't know from the other. And so that's going to be the same thing here. So you might have one organization that has a piece of information or has some sort of technology, and the other organizations don't. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting system that they have in place there. And it's, as far as the public goes, I mean, they're not going to share anything with us until they absolutely have to. And I appreciate, it's 4-0 now, by the way, Jimmy. I appreciate what they're doing as far as, okay, we're having these congressional hearings. We put Arrow together, although Arrow, you can only report to Arrow if you're part of the government. So, if you're a civilian, you can't report to Arrow. But they're at least acknowledging that, okay, something is going on, but they're still trying to control the narrative. Everybody is walking around with a cell phone these days and can take all of this amazing footage. Back in 60s, 70s, 80s, it was blurry images and, okay, the night sky with a light or a series of lights, and anybody could just say, well, that's some sort of trick of light or what have you. But these days everything is so crisp and clear and really detailed that they can no longer deny it, so they have to give us something. And that's what we're starting to see play out, but they're still controlling the narrative here. So again, I really appreciate what's going on, but when you have and I appreciate somebody like David Grush, but when he's saying, oh yeah, the government has crashed material, well, yeah, we've been talking about that since Roswell, right? I mean, that's not really news, but it's still great that it's being acknowledged that there is something there. So, people like us, or people in the ufology community that have been talking about this for years, are no longer considered, crackpots and nut jobs, that, we're starting to be taken seriously now. And that's a good thing.
In Caroline Corey's film, A Tear in the Sky, came out like 3 years ago. I'm sure you've seen it. But that film centered around what her and her crew picked up out here in Southern California over Catalina Island, which appeared, that's the name of the film, A Tear in the Sky,
Mhm.
which appeared that something, a portal of some kind, wormhole, Stargate, opened up in the sky and a bunch of objects came through it. They were able to look at the weather data and everything else, and the weather radar, which was important to check out that area. And they certainly picked up a group of objects that came through. I would have thought a film like that, with that kind of breakthrough, would have rippled the waters a little bit, and a lot of attention would have been paid to that film because of that medium of a portal that certainly checks a lot of boxes
Yeah.
on how they're getting here so easily. And I would say that falls into the definition of portal, vortex, wormhole, and it was certainly there, and they had the data to back it up. again, do you think that our government is aware of situations like that around the world where these portals or stargates are opening?
Yeah, they're going to be aware of that, and they're going to monitor that for sure. But they're not going to be very vociferous about it. They're going to, is for them. I mean, they're not going to make it public themselves. I mean, the work that she's done is amazing, and so it's through those channels that we're getting that information. But the government isn't going to, make a big splash about it, but they're going to keep an eye on it. You have to keep in mind, like even NASA has come forward and said, "Hey, we have portals in space," but they're not calling them portals in space. Even though when you get down, when we drill down into it, they do acknowledge they're portals, but they're calling them things like X points and things like this to kind of really subdue what we're actually talking about. And these are locations in space that it's where the magnetosphere of the Earth meets up with the solar wind, and you have these portals that are opening and closing at different intervals. They open up at different sizes. They've had satellites up there for almost 10 years now monitoring this, and they still have no predictive model for when these things are going to open, how big they will be when they do open, and these sorts of things. So it's amazing to me how the science has continued to do this research, but still can't really tell you much information about it, except, yeah, they exist and we're watching them. But it's that subtle acknowledgement that, yes, portals actually do exist, but we're not going to call them portals. So to me, it's kind of humorous.
Yeah, totally. Roland Emmerich's Stargate, when it came out, and it's a film that, Mike, I admit, man, it's one of my guilty pleasures. I watch it all the time. And when it came out, it brought the term Stargate and what it represents into popular culture. Suddenly it was a word, right? It's in the dictionary. Well, I don't know if it is, but it should be. And it was used an awful lot. And that was the introduction to millions and millions of people around the world to this concept. But he wasn't the first person to use it. We just mentioned Project Stargate within the government, and certainly, that was with the CIA and the Department of Defense and so forth. But that goes back to 1970, 71, 72 at the Stanford Research Institute.
Yeah.
It wasn't called Stargate then, but Stargates and those concepts have been around for a long time, right?
Yeah, they've been around since at least ancient Egypt, because we actually find that specific word there in Egypt and temples all over the place out there. They're actually specific hieroglyphs that spell out the word Saba, SB, and we put the A's in there because ancient Egypt didn't have vowels. But then you have, and basically that's a folded sheet for S and the foot for B. But then you have a couple of symbols in there that are determinatives, which are the star and the gate. And so you have Stargate right here, and they will usually find them next to actual doorways or gateways into some of these temples, or into rooms within those temples, like the Temple of Abydos or Karnak and some of these. So you actually find that word there, Stargate, in ancient Egypt. And the functionality of it. So the question is, okay, what was a Stargate to the ancient Egyptians? Were they traveling to other places in the cosmos, maybe other places on Earth? Were they entering into altered states of consciousness to interact with different beings and individuals and things like that? That part we don't really know. So that becomes a bit speculative, but we know that they had very sacred rooms that they considered Stargates, and temples that they actually considered Stargates.
I just thought about this. Muhammad Ibrahim's company is called Saboteurs.
It is, yes, yeah. So he's calling
got the logo.
Stargate Tours. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, and Muhammad is all over my book too, and actually show his company logo, Saboteurs, in there. So
I should have worn that for the show tonight. Yeah, his shirt.
Yeah, I should have, because I have the T-shirt as well.
Yeah,
but,
man. Love that guy and his wife.
Oh, yeah,
No
he's
high.
great. Yeah,
Just
no,
just amazing people. And he took me. Let me see if I can pull this up.
Yeah.
Just hang on for a second. You just stay right there. I'm going to move you over there, and then
Right.
I'm going to come over here. And let me see if I can pull this up. If I can, oh, it's our lucky day. Okay, so let me move this over here. I'm going to move this over here. Let's go to here. And let's go to full screen. Okay, I am now set up. Sorry about that. I didn't know we were going in this direction, but let me pull this up. Speaking of Muhammad, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and ancient Egypt. This is, and I know you've been there, but I'll just show this to everybody.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Chapel of the Seven Gates in
Yeah,
Karnak.
the 7 gates. Yep.
And this is the Chapel of the Seven Gates. And funny enough, this was taken on my birthday. This was on October 10th last year. And
Yeah, you and my mother share the same birthday.
yeah, isn't that crazy? But this is the Temple of the Seven Gates. That is the name of it in Karnak.
Mhm. Yep.
It's absolutely incredible. And the story, and I'm going to say myth. Let's go with myth, right? That's a good part of this. But the story behind the Chapel of the Seven Gates is exactly that this is a portal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tours I do out there with Muhammad are the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. We're doing that again in 2025. But yeah, you find this sort of thing there in Egypt all over. You find these different gates and you find these different portals, and then you find the actual symbolism of the hieroglyphs actually spelling out the word Stargate. It's all over, and that's a big feature within the book. One of the chapters there that I have.
Muhammad took this picture, by the way.
Yeah,
Muhammad took this picture, and the other fascinating thing about this, we talk about these ideas and these concepts, and you wonder, okay, all right, it's a good story, but you need some other components to go with it, and you have it here because you walk around this wall into the next room, and directly behind the seven gates that you see here is a tree of life with 7 ankhs on it. It's right where my head is, right? Man, I got a big ass head, don't I? I got a big old cranium.
Well, I think it's the angle of the photo there, Jimmy.
Yeah, you know what? I have jumbo pillows too. I have big jumbo pillows I have to sleep with to rest that giant cranium on. But yeah, and so what is that? In the other room, there's nothing else on that wall, but that tree of life and those 7 ankhs. Again, it's the other stuff that adds to the rest of the evidence here.
Yeah. There's a story that they're telling us here at these different temples. You go to Abydos and you go back into the Hall of Osiris, and there's a lot of ancient divine numerology that's within that temple. You have the 72 pillars, you have the 7 chapels, you have back in the Hall of Osiris where you have the depiction of the raising of the Jed pillar, which is the raising of the backbone of Egypt. You have 3 Stargate rooms, labeled specifically Stargates. It's beautiful. Then you have another couple of Stargate rooms at another part of that temple, and within the antechamber leading up to these other rooms, which have magnificent skylights, which you can catch rays of sun. It looks like, okay, here I am in the Stargate, right? But it tells a story of the offering of these white cakes, these monatomic white gold cakes that they would ingest and prepare themselves to go into these Stargate chambers. So, is it one of those initiations in which they are altering their frequency, altering their DNA, their makeup as they go into these chambers to actually experience the Stargate? When you walk into these temples, one of the very first things that happens, even if the temple is made of limestone or sandstone or something like that, the gateway going into these temples are always made of granite. You step over a granite threshold, and that clears your energy so that you're going into the temple with fresh energy, with good energy. And then you're going back into these, it might be Hatshepsut's temple, and it has the bark hall, which is the transformation of the gods. And then you're ingesting these white cakes that are altering your frequency to go into these stargates and experience. And that's the piece that, you know, we're trying to get a hold of, because you see the story there in ancient Egypt where they are interacting with these gods and beings and these sorts of people. You know, they're talking about going to different lands, going to different star systems and things like this. So did they physically go? Did they enter into an altered state of consciousness where maybe their body stayed, but their consciousness went somewhere? That's the mysterious part about it. Like, how did that component of it actually work? But they were doing something. They were actually interacting with different beings and entities in different worlds.
The idea behind this, in a modern sense, when you look at special and general relativity and what was presented there, and then those numbers analyzed and looked at by other physicists later, and Rosenberg and others that started to look at these concepts, even time loops too as well, kind of express themselves in those figures. So something that you and I have talked about before. But these are that's a modern way of applying science to this concept. The ancients clearly had a grip. Did they stumble upon it accidentally? We're going to segue into Atlantis here in just a second, or did this knowledge come from somewhere else?
Well, and that's a great question. Where did it originate? And the whole segue into Atlantis. Is it older technology that had been passed down from a previous civilization that had been lost? We don't really know that for sure. But we do know that they were certainly connected to our universe in different ways than we are today. You know, when we talk about ancient civilizations having high technology, I think people kind of scoff at that a little bit, because I think they're a little confused. We're not talking high technology of computers and cell phones and things like that. It was a different type of high technology where they were able to actually harness the earth energy and use it for different purposes. So you find a lot of these sites built on top of what we would call ley lines and things like this. But our science has shown that like the Great Pyramid of Giza is harnessing energy out of the ground, and science isn't hasn't come forth to say what they were using that energy for. It comes down to researchers like us that are saying, well, from what we've been able to deduce from all the written texts and what's on the walls of the temples and these sorts of things, that they were using it for some of these other purposes like stargates and portals and what have you.
Those ideas, and I love that, right? These types of ideas. How do we apply that to today? Well, it's actually very simple. And I hate to use this comparison, but it's an easy one to do. If you take the cell phone and you think about everything that is now inside of it, right? 25, 30, 40 years ago, that was 2 rooms full of gear.
Right.
No, serious. And
I've been in those rooms.
Yeah. And these phones are doing stuff today that though even 2 rooms of equipment couldn't do. In addition to that, so it's a way to look at it. And in the future, who knows? We may be receiving audio straight to our brains. We may, we may talk about downloading a movie on your phone. How about just downloading one to your brain? Well, and then taking consciousness to another level. Suddenly, these are even obsolete, right? And even that's out of the way. And then we're right back to what the ancients were doing 5,000 years ago. Everything goes full circle, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely comes full circle. And Yeah, the what the ancients had figured out is basically what Tesla was talking about 100 years ago, that everything is, frequency, resonance, energy, vibration, and they were so in tune with what was going on with the planet and with the universe that they were able to make these connections just a part of their natural culture. Like, okay, we're going to ingest whatever it is, we're going to change our frequency, go into the temple and do these different things and be able to interact with whatever it was. Was it, another civilization across the planet? Was it another civilization across the cosmos? Was it maybe it was a force of nature? You look at the word netter, which is supposed to be the Egyptian word for God, but it actually means force of nature. So they were certainly more in tune with nature than we are today. They were more connected to it. We've kind of lost that. So yeah, when we get back to, okay, what is a Stargate, and what are we doing in the lab to create these wormholes? It all comes back down to frequency, resonance, energy, vibration.
The staying on this for a second,
Mhm.
you mentioned Tesla, then we're going to go back to
Yeah.
portals and Stargates. But if you think about what Tesla was laying out, electricity without cable,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
And then but that doesn't make money. What makes money is the infrastructure of 5 billion telephone poles in New York City, all threaded right across it, with
Sure.
wires going everywhere, copper wires run across the country through transformer boxes and step repeaters, and then running this infrastructure across the country, not only with electricity but with telephone lines. And it wasn't that long ago when this entire country was bristling with telephone poles and electrical
Mhm.
lines. Now everything is fiber optic and below ground. We still have them in some places, but that's like a rare sight. And we're going backwards, right? It's like we had to go through that phase, and now it's more simplistic. We don't have rabbit ears on our TV, right? Everything is now
Right.
contained in fiber optics or satellite signals, and we're slowly moving away from all of that too as well, which goes back to what Tesla tried to have us do in the beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting again how it's come full circle like that. And there's a couple things that were at play with that. Like you stated, there wasn't money to be made at that time. So JP Morgan's like, what do you mean give away free energy and free broadcast signals and all that sort of thing? So he couldn't see money being made out of it. So we're going to take off here. The other thing was the short-sightedness of the people at the of the era, and Tesla's vision being so far ahead of his time. So you had Marconi that was essentially using Tesla's technology to send broadcasts from shore to ship, and that was successful. And you had investors at the time saying, okay, I can see that shore to ship. And you had Tesla over here saying, forget that. That's nothing. That's chump change. I can do that in my sleep. No, we're going to go the whole world. We're going to go worldwide with that. And the people of the era were just, blown away by that concept and laughed them out the door. Like, what are you talking about sending a signal across the world? We're just doing, shore to ship, and that's fine. So they didn't really have that grand overall vision where Tesla did. And yeah, now it's taken 100 years to finally get to what Tesla was talking about all those years ago.
Now, the idea when we look at the Einstein-Rosen Bridge or a wormhole, do you equate those with an Egyptian or Atlantean Stargate as the same thing?
Yeah, actually. So the at the very beginning of the book, you have the chapter, What is a Stargate? And so I do break down the Einstein-Rosen Bridge, different uses of what Stargates can be used for, the difference between, okay, what's a Stargate, what's a portal. And yeah, I believe with Atlantis that the temple that they had in that center island was a working Stargate. Now, it's very hard to prove that even with the text that we have from Plato and the scant pieces that we have from other areas. But that's my belief of what was at the center of the capital city of Atlantis, because this was a civilization that spread across the world.
Now, without the application of hard science that we have today, how would the ancients? I know I briefly asked, could this have come from the stars? But we have different locations around the world where these stargates, and I've visited many, so have you.
Yeah.
That are different cultures, different continents.
Yeah.
How did they discover this? And was it an energy situation where they found a certain power in that area, and they put an X on the ground and was like, it's right here. How did they stumble upon this?
Yeah, honestly, kind of like that. So when we talk about the difference between a portal and a Stargate, so a portal is naturally occurring. We talked about the X points a little bit earlier. So we know that these naturally occur in our universe. So the Stargate would be an intelligent being being able to harness this sort of thing like a portal for their own purposes, being able to control it. And yeah, we do have many locations across the globe that are more energetic than others. And the ancients had ways of figuring out where these were. And we still use these methods to this day to some degree, like the old school dowsing rods. You have surveyors that will still use dowsing rods to this day to find things like pipes and water and things like this in the ground. And this is one way that the ancients were able to go and find some of these different energetic locations. And they had figured out that, hey, we can harness this energy and do different things with it. That's why you find these ancient sites of power with these massive standing stones that scientists have gone out there and have measured different frequencies and energies off of these stones that are quite palpable. They have found different patterns, like a spiraling pattern within some of these locations, like the rollright stones. And the ancients knew how to be able to harness and use these things. And you got to think about this. Okay, if we're able to go out there and find these measurements today, thousands of years later, how much more powerful was it back then when these stones were not weathered down? They were in their full glory. They were all there, because many of these locations have lost their many of the stones and things like this. So imagine these locations in their full glory, fully energetic, and what they were able to do with these.
Well, and people knew what they were doing.
Yeah,
that's the other, for sure, right? That recipe, that cookbook, is long lost. Yeah, I totally agree. What about? I wanted to let's back up.
Okay.
Last night, Brian Baer, who is just an amazing professor here in California, I was listening to his ancient Egypt. It's the great courses, right? And he does.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I love the great courses, and so anyway, Hatshepsut. So he's talking about her life and everything behind it. But he said one thing that stood out. Now, he's not a woo-woo guy.
Okay.
He's not. But, publicly. But he lets stuff slip once in a while. Okay. And he started talking about her temple. And a couple of the secret rooms that are there, and the reason why she chose that specific site. And then his other slip up, and one that I do agree with him on, was that it was of his opinion that it is the most magnificent site in Egypt. And I would say that is true. There's you are in awe.
Yeah.
When you step up to that temple, Abydos is great, right? Dendara is great. There are places in Egypt that are just mind blowing. The Assyrian, right? It's no question about these places, but her site is perfect, and not only is it perfect, it's friggin' ginormous. That's the other thing. It's overwhelming in its size and its scope. It's epic, right? It's panoramic.
Yeah, it's an amazing location, and every time I've been there, it's been extremely hot too. I mean,
I know.
it kind of bakes
I've
that
never,
place.
yeah,
Oh,
I've never been there and just did a stroll.
right.
No, no,
You're
I'm walking.
roasting there.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're just like, man, I got to get to the top of these stairs.
Yeah.
If I can just get to the top of that, I wonder if there's water. I
Right.
wonder if there's water.
Of course, there's not.
There's got to be some shade up here somewhere. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. The one room that has shade, the bar, they don't let you any further beyond that. And those are the rooms you want to get into as well. But yeah, Hatshepsut's temple is really, to me, it's the epitome of a Stargate. I mean, it is a perfect setup. I mean, you have this grand staircase that goes all the way back up into the main temple area and straight back into the Holy of Holies. Now, flanking that staircase, today you have these two falcons there, which are supposed to be representative of Horus. But if you look at the trail that they lead up the side of the stairs, basically they serve as the railings for that staircase, and they're actually snake tails. So there is a belief by many that these falcons are actually recarvings, and that the original animals that had been there were actually cobras, because the tails are still there. So you have now the snake, the serpent, was the symbol in the ancient world of energy. And you can find this in cultures all over the world. There was even a project in the 70s and 80s called the Dragon Project that was going to stone circles and megalithic sites to study the earth energy there. And they called themselves the Dragon Project because of the dragons from Chinese geomancy, which, of course, again, a representative of energy. So you have this symbolism of energy going up along the staircase back into this area. Off to the side of the temple is what we have today. Is just the base of a small pyramid, but there had been a pyramid there. Now, we've already talked about pyramids harnessing earth energy. So you have the representation of energy going up along the staircase. You have an actual device there to energize this whole area. And as you go back into this temple, through the gateways on either side, you see Stargate, Great Stargate. When you go back into the Bark Hall, which is, again, the transformation of the gods, again, you have Stargates right on the side of this entranceway. Now, the guards there will stop you. You can't get any further back into the Holy of Holies unless you get up there super early when nobody else is there, and then you can grease some palms and get back there. And what's in the Holy of Holies along one of the walls off to the side is this cartouche full of stars, which is really like, the ultimate representation of a Stargate.
Really?
Nowhere else do you see this cartouche full of stars, but there it is in Hatshepsut's temple.
What? That says a lot of things to me. What do you think it says? What does Muhammad say?
What's interesting with Muhammad is, again, this is like the only place that he has seen this, and he is saying, well, basically, this is the Stargate. This is because usually when we see our Stargate symbolism, you have the Stargate hieroglyphs, and then next to it is the cartouche of the king that was basically the authority over that particular Stargate. And we only have 5 that we know of to this point that had that Stargate authority. So now you're talking about a cartouche that usually has a king's name in it that is just full of the stars. So it's almost like this is the king of the cosmos, the king of the universe.
I'm going to see if I can let me see if I can find an image of this. Let's see here. All right.
I have an image, but it's not my image, and I don't want to
that's okay.
I didn't include it in the book because I don't own the image, and that individual is
I've never been that deep into the temple. I'm telling you, I'm looking at the temple here, and I swear my heart just gets pounding. It is the most beautiful sight. There's something about her temple to me that is it feels modern. It's got a modern concept to it. You
It,
know,
it's a lot different than some of the other temples. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
and another thing about that temple, Jimmy, when you walk out, like if you're coming from the Holy of Holies, like imagine you just were somewhere else, maybe another planet somewhere or whatever, and you just teleported right into that Holy of Holies. You walk straight out of that Holy of Holies through the bark hall, through the courtyard, and down that grand staircase. And you have an amazing view of the Nile, but straight across that Nile River, it's like 6 miles, is a beeline directly into the Holy of Holies of the Temple of Karnak. It's perfectly straight.
I did not know that. Oh, I will say this, and I say this with a smile on my face. You would think walking down the stairs is easier than going up in the sun. It's not.
It's not. No.
No. The walk back is just as, it's like, man, this is never going to end because it's so big and so grand. You know, it's just like over the top. It's you know, as far as an individual temple goes, it's got to be the biggest in Egypt. And I would say in scale, it nearly rivals the Great Pyramid. It's like that big. And those stairs, and there's 2 sets, are no joke. I mean, they are wide, they are long, and when you pull up, and everybody should go and look. Maybe I'll pull up a picture, but I have lots of images. But anyway, when you pull up and you have to ride a separate, what do you call those?
Yeah, the
things?
little bus. I forget
Car
the acronym.
buses.
It's a little bus thing. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bus thing. And then you take that up to the next level and you get out and it's off in the distance, man.
Yeah.
And you could see how big it is in the
right
cliff.
back into the mesa. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're like, wait a minute. You got to walk that? It is. He really went over the top.
Yeah.
But
well, you know what's on the other side of Hatshepsut's temple? Like if you were to continue on through that whole cliff and the mesa and everything, you know what's back there, right?
What?
It's the Valley of the Kings.
Oh yeah, the Valley of the Kings.
Yeah, it's straight
yeah,
back
of
there.
course.
Yeah, it's all a part of that whole structure. Yeah.
There's another. I can't remember the name. Maybe you know, but on the left, if you're facing the stairway, right to the left, is an entrance to a subterranean tomb. And that tomb, which still has bones on the ground and stuff, I've had friends that have gone in there. I've never been in there. I've seen video and I've seen film. Anyway, that's why she chose that location, because that tomb that is there is like 5,000 years old. And the other thing is, in front of the temple, as you pull away in the butt, you can see all of the other seriously old temples that are there. It's not just hers. There are many that are on that site, and there's dozens of them as you go back down the hill.
Yeah, there's all kinds of temples there.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, so beautiful. But anyway, so I have heard over the years about the Holy of Holies there, and that was a Stargate, but restricted access, that you just can't get back there and you can't see it.
Yeah, like I said, you have to get there, because when we went there in 2021, and Jimmy, I'll share with you offline the full story on that. When we got there in 2021, now this is just coming out of COVID, so not only were we there early in the day, but nobody was traveling. So we got to some of these sites and there was nobody else there but us. And one of the others in our group ran straight up there right off the bat before anybody else could get up there. And like I said, I don't know how much money he greased those guys' palms with, but he was able to get back there and grab that photo. And offline, I'll share that with you.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Stuff goes on everywhere in Egypt, and I get it. It doesn't bother me, but the tourism. Here's the problem with that, and the same thing goes on in Peru. You have large amounts of tourists there. You know, Machu Picchu is the #1 tourist site in all of South America. So just think about what's going on there on a daily basis and what security, transportation, logistics that is involved in getting people safely on and off that hill. Well, you have to get people safely in and out of the Great Pyramid. You have to get people at her temple, and or the Bent Pyramid. These men that the Bent Pyramid is probably the most dangerous thing I've ever done in my life.
That is a tough, a lot of people talk. I mean, the Great Pyramid of Giza by far is bigger, but it's that, that incline. It's not as long as like getting into the subterranean of the Great Pyramid, but it's so much steeper that it makes it a lot tougher.
And it's this big, man. The tunnel is like,
yeah, you're having to like really scrunch down and crawl in there. And then once you get through that, you have to climb up this scaffolding that they've put in place to get to those central chambers. And you're looking at this like there's no way that they
built this like this to drag in a sarcophagus and bury somebody within the temple. That makes
I
totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah, after the bent pyramid, after you go down backwards in the tunnel, you don't go frontwards.
Yeah, you have to go down backwards. Yeah,
you go back. You scrape your back the whole way down, right? And you get down. There's no oxygen. It smells like 5,000-year-old pee.
You got some bats in there, so yeah.
It's gnarly, man. And so you're down there. There's no oxygen, and then you got to climb the scaffold. And then what's at the top of that, and that tunnel is as treacherous as anything.
You crawl through this little.
No, man, no. It's a big no. So look, you go to Egypt. You want to go to the Bent Pyramid? Don't let me go and face your fears. I did.
Yeah.
All right,
but at least once, just to say you did it.
I'm done though. I'm done.
Three times.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done, man. But why did I even bring that up? Oh, I bring that up because when we look at these different sites in Egypt, the idea proposed on all of these sites that it was a pharaoh renaming it, it was a pharaoh topping it, it was a pharaoh doing this. It was a pharaoh's burial site. That's a whole lot of effort to go into such a simplified idea. There's something else much bigger and grander behind these ginormous sites. Yeah. And I would say that the idea of a Stargate, something else going on, something with some energy and mind behind it, I mean, the power of the mind and consciousness is something that makes much more sense than a simple civil building project for the populace.
Yeah, the idea that like the Great Pyramid of Giza was a tomb, it just makes no sense. I mean, for one, there was never a body ever found in it whatsoever. But then you see the scoring that's been like the Queen's Chamber to me is the smoking gun on that. And I do go into that in Portals to the Stars, where they've actually found crystallized salt and things like this along on the walls. Christopher Dunn talks about it being some sort of chemical reaction chamber, but there's a corbelled niche within the one wall of the Queen's Chamber, and the whole backside of it is blackened, like it's been burned, and you see that the stone has been melted, it's vitrified, and it's like, okay, something was extremely hot here that actually melted this stone. And, traditional archaeology tries to say, well, there would have been like some sort of statue or something like that in this niche. Now, there's also a tunnel that is in the back of that niche that goes back about 90 feet. And it's like, that makes no sense for there being some sort of idol here. And in the Queen's Chamber, there's no like box or sarcophagus or anything like that. So that makes no sense whatsoever. Then you go up to the King's Chamber, which, yes, there is a box. But the construction of it is different than sarcophagi that we find traditionally throughout Egypt, and it's blackened. This is Aswan rose granite, and it's brown and black in some places. And you look at the walls; they're also brown and black. And actually, the ceiling has these really interesting. They're small rectangular. Score marks of some sort that are up there, and they're very, very evenly placed out along either side of the ceiling there that actually line up very nicely with that coffer that's there. And you're looking at like, this was some sort of chemical reaction. Something happened here. We're not precisely sure what, but definitely was not a tomb.
It was Bob Bear. I said Brian Bear. It's Professor Bob Bear. and he's so
Bob Bear.
interesting.
Yeah, he's the one that I watch him whenever I get ready to go to Egypt. I watch his hieroglyphs course.
You know what? I've taken that course.
Yeah,
I wrote my name. You remember that? Okay,
yeah, one of the first things you do is write your name.
Yeah. When we come back next week, I want you to practice writing your name. And I took the course. Okay, I'm going to let that go. There's a lot of conversation. Everybody should go and look at the great courses Bob Bear, his hieroglyphics class.
It's really good,
and it's amazing. And I thought I was going to go to Egypt and just read all this stuff, and no, I can read some of it though.
It's a nice introduction. It's a nice introduction. Yeah.
I've done it a few times. Anyway, I brought that up because I brought Bob Bear. What were we just talking about? The sarcophagus. Okay. Yeah. Here's the interesting part about this. And this is where I will call Mike, you're an adult. Okay. So I'm just going to say this. This is where I call bullshit. Okay. Right here. That sarcophagus, most people don't understand this, and they don't talk about it because it really confuses the dogma that has been presented to the world. That sarcophagus is 2 inches wider than the entrance into the king's chamber.
Yeah.
So therefore, it wasn't dragged up and placed in there. It was placed in there before the Great Pyramid was completed.
Right.
Now, the idea behind that, okay, that's okay. I understand that. No, you don't, people. We're talking about 200 feet in the air above the ground where the king's chamber sits.
Yeah.
And this is a giant red granite box, as with the rest of the red granite stones and the relieving stones, the ceiling of the chamber itself, all of that. But that red granite, so the I don't know, Senefru was dead by then, so I don't know who the brainiac behind that was according to the dogma. But to have that kind of engineering skill set at 5,000 years ago, 3,000 BC, whatever, 2750 BC, whatever the dogma presents itself, to have that kind of forethought and to think about this and to place that in there and then build the pyramid around it and then that's insanity for Stone Age man. That's insanity.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you look at the antechamber before you even walk in, you have this one single granite block that the part that serves as the wall has these grooves, these channels that go down vertical through it. There's like 8 of them, right? But then the piece actually wraps around to the wall, and you're looking at this like there has to be some sort of functionality to this. It's not some sort of nice design or something. It's too complicated.
It's mechanical.
There's some sort of mechanical function to this. Absolutely.
Yeah, I stopped and stared at that. Right, with that whole like 10 feet area, right, that you're talking about right there, and you just look up and you go, okay, all right. I don't know what's going on here, but this is complex.
Oh, very complex.
Yeah. And to go back to this, we don't have any written versions of so many mysteries of Egypt. There are no written versions of how to mummify a body, what the processes were to that. There was nothing that describes a Stargate or how to do things. And certainly none of the temples, these engineering marvels, the pyramids, there isn't a written description on how they did any of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no directions on how to build a pyramid. None.
No. We can see how we can see recipes for beer and bread. Right. right. We got that. We got that fish soup. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We got that. Okay. We understand. But all of the great, the real stuff, None of that was written down. And you would think, now, was it because of secrecy, right? That they didn't want other people to know how they were getting this stuff done? That there was a secrecy behind mummification and the process of doing this? And it wasn't just for the pharaohs. Everything was mummified, but the processes were never documented. Why do you think that is? That all of the great mysteries of Egypt were not written down, but everything else of daily life certainly was.
Right. Just so that we'd be asking this question today.
I know, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, some of it, okay, when it comes to the mummification process, I mean, because people died all the time, it might have just been so routine for them that they didn't feel the need to write it down because they were doing it every day all the time. And you had these, specific guys that were doing it and all that. So they might not have felt the need to write it down because resources at the time, papyrus to make the ink and all that, took a lot of work to create all of that. And the scribes, they were artists. And if you're going to put something on a wall of a temple, well, that's even more work. But something like a pyramid, something that they're not always building. There's a limited number of pyramids that are there. You would think something like that would have been written down, as far as, hey, this is how we need to build such a thing. But you don't find that anywhere. And we do find, though, there are smaller pyramids, like in comparison to like the Great Pyramid of Giza. They're tiny. And you do find that, okay, some of these really smaller ones did actually serve as burials, but they were more like replicas of, the bigger ones. Like, okay, and this is what I believe happened, that, they basically came across these pyramids. They were already there when their civilization started to take place. Maybe there were the survivors of Atlantis. I know we haven't quite talked about that yet. And, they revered these massive structures that were there. No idea how they were built, but we can kind of replicate a smaller one here and, bury our guy in here. And the difference between these ones, like, look at the step pyramid at Saqqara, and there's a smaller pyramid, Unis, that's right there on the other side of the courtyard. And it has hieroglyphs inside of it. It has stars on the ceiling and these sorts of things. The bigger, massive pyramids have none of that. There are no hieroglyphs in those massive pyramids. There aren't stars on the ceilings. They had other functions, like we were talking about with the Great Pyramid, or you look at the step pyramid and you go inside there, and it is a massive shaft, all the way through there with this, they call it a vault, but it's unlike anything else we've seen anywhere else in Egypt. And it's got like this massive like plunger stopper thing through a hole in the ceiling of this vault. But again, no hieroglyphs or anything like that. And
when you walk into the step pyramid, first off, the pictures of it that you see online, it looks like some rundown pile of rocks.
Yeah.
It is one of the most beautiful things your eyes will ever be exposed to. It is incredibly beautiful from the outside. Pictures just don't do it justice. You go and you see that in person, and you can't help but be overwhelmed. But anyway, when you go through and you enter and you go up to the edge of the pit that you're talking about, and you look down,
it's a massive drop.
It is massive.
Yeah.
Massive. That is like, it's almost bottomless. It's almost bottomless.
It is. And
it's like, what? And it's how many feet around? 30 feet, maybe?
Yeah, it's a square chamber. Yeah, something like 30 by 30. And it's 90 feet down.
Yeah, 90 feet. 9 stories, man. I'm telling you.
And it's not the only shaft like that in the area. You go across the other side of the courtyard, and there's another shaft like that straight down, which you can actually get down. I don't know if Muhammad took you on your tour, but you can get down there and actually get next to that vault. And that vault is huge. It's like 15 feet high. It's made of granite. And it's another 90-foot shaft. However, there's no pyramid on top of it.
No, there's no pyramid there. And here's one last thing. 10 kilometers of tunnels.
Oh yeah. There's tunnels all over the place within there.
Everybody just let that soak in your head. 10 kilometers of tunnel. You know what? I bet you go down there, right? And you better have a string. You better have a ball of string. That's all I got to say. You need to find your way back out, because you will find a body in there. Oh, that's 5 years old. That's somebody that got lost.
Yeah, some tourists got lost down there. Yeah.
It's treacherous, man. It is treacherous. 10 kilometers of tunnels that just go every which way when you're dead. It's nuts. It's nuts. Now, if we back to the documentation of Stargates and with ancient Egypt, you can just about anywhere in Egypt go and see a pharaoh sitting in a chair, a throne, and underneath it, if you look, is their favorite pet.
Right.
You'll see a cat, right? You'll see a dog. You'll see a pet under, sometimes a monkey, right? So that attention to detail is there.
Yep.
But there's nothing about the construction of the temples or the pyramids. And Plato said at 400 BC, he said, and I'm quoting him, they built the pyramids with machines. That's a direct quote.
Yeah.
And that's what was told to him from the priest of Egypt, right? Now, no description of what these machines were or what Plato meant by that, but the word itself, they were built with mechanical devices. Now, what was it? What was it that he was referring to? Well, that's lost to time, but that's as close as we've got, because the Egyptians didn't give it to us. We got that information from Plato of all sources.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting, the bits that we get from other sources, and we see evidence of the machine tooling that's there. Now, traditional academia tries to tell us, well, they had stone and copper tools. Well, you don't have these nice straight cuts through granite with stone and copper. There's a fantastic, and you've probably seen it, Jimmy, at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, the sarcophagus that's laid down on its side, where you can see the cut along the backside where they were cutting off the lid for it from underneath. And it broke in the process, and they left it abandoned or whatever. But you can actually see that there was one blade on top, one blade on the bottom, basically two circular saws cutting through it. And this is something Mohammed loves to point out. So I took this couple of photographs, took it back to my dad, who was a tool and die maker by trade, a machinist. He basically, would build the machines that would build the parts, that sort of thing. So very handy guy. And I'm like, Dad, what in the world would cut this sort of thing? And he's looking at it, it's like, that's granite, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, obviously, circular saws, probably diamond tipped. These are not supposed to be things that the ancient Egyptians had, but yet we're seeing the evidence of it there. If you just look at the machine marks, it's right there.
It's such a fascinating part of this. And when you look at the documentary about how they had to move Abu Simbel, go and watch that documentary footage. Okay. Where they had an international team of the best engineers on planet Earth, right? To plan and move. Now, Abu Simbel is one of the most dramatic things you can ever see. It's just incredible, right? Okay. But they were building the Aswan Dam. They were going to flood the area, so they had to move it to higher ground and so forth. Anyway, what went behind that? And they cut everything apart into blocks and reassembled it. And the struggle and the machine and the saws and the cranes and the tracks and the and they almost didn't get it done. Right? It was like that. And so anyway, you watch the best hydraulic, diamond tipped, ginormous machines on planet Earth, all at Abu Simbel, right? The biggest of the thing, and the hard and the welders and the caging and the way that and everything that they had to do just to move it. And then you back up and you go, well, then how did the Egyptians do it?
Exactly.
I mean, it's
such a struggle
comedy.
for us today, and for them, it was a part of their culture. They did it all the time,
and it took us years, and we didn't even carve it. We just cut it apart. That's all we did, man. Cut it apart and moved it and had to reassemble it. And it's just a fascinating documentary because what it does is it opens up the door to, okay, well, what they've been telling us is a lie, right?
Yeah.
Because if we can't do it now, then how did they do it then? Yeah. Now it's crazy to me. Now we need to take a break, so let's get that in. We're 20 minutes late into the break. Our guest tonight, Mike Ricksecker. Tonight we're talking about Stargates and portals. Now, when we come back, I want to talk about Peru, but I also want to talk about our own backyard right here in the United States of America, North America. We'll do all of that next with Mike Ricksecker. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Beckley Teppy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Mike Ricksecker. We're talking about Stargates and portals. His new book is called Portals to the Stars, Inside Stargates, Atlantis, and the Secrets of Ancient Egypt. And now, Mike.
Yeah.
What do you feel when you go through a portal or a Stargate? Physically, what happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I've talked with people that have felt like they were about to, walk into such, one of these such things. And they talk about the feeling some energy, that there is like a tingly feeling, this sort of thing. But the stories are a bit mixed, because you hear of people like, I have an entire chapter on portals in the wilderness, and stories about people that have gone missing, or other phenomena that's kind of out there in the wild. Now, again, talking about naturally occurring portals. And some people, like, they hear a noise often, they're out in the woods, hiking or whatever, they hear a noise off on the side of the path, so they take 2 steps out there to go take a look, can't find what the noise is, go back to the path, and the path is gone. They've been transported somewhere, whether it was to another point in time, some other place out in the wilderness. They're not sure. And, fortunately, those handful of people are found. But to them, it was like nothing. It was like they just walked into anything else. So the stories and reports are kind of mixed on this as to, what they have felt. I know that, so we've talked a little bit about how some of these stone circles may have served as portals in these types of things. I remember being out in the middle of Drombeg Stone Circle out in Ireland, and this particular stone circle has only 13 of the original 17 stones, of course, are weathered down, and I'm standing directly in the middle and just talking. You feel like this resonance off of the stones, and sure, it has something to do with the way that the sound of your voice is bouncing around within this structure, but it had this weird, like, fishbowl type of feel to it. And it's just, kind of thinking, wow, imagine standing in the center of this, thousands of years ago when it was first constructed. The stones are at their full height. All the stones are there, and trying to do like a ceremonial chant, the way that would actually feel around your body. Something like that would have been absolutely amazing. So a lot of different kind of looks and feels and these sorts of things with the different portals.
Now, I had the same kind of sensation. We'll get to that in just a second.
Yeah.
What about Aramumuru in Peru? One of the more talked about, not only historically it being a Stargate and a portal, but the stories behind it, and whether you want to call it folklore or the local indigenous cultures there have their stories about that site. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Aramumuru, really, really interesting location. They call it the Gateway of the Gods. And there's really kind of like 2 gateways in this. It's a 22 by 22 square that's carved into the rock. And then you have the smaller doorway. Yeah, right there. Exactly. And then like that notch that's in the back of there. And so, one of the fascinating stories from there is that when the Spanish conquistadors were coming in, and basically people were kind of fleeing for their lives because they were refusing to convert and things like that, the last emperor of one of these tribes that was fleeing across the Andes went to this location, took a device out of his pocket, put it into that notch, and then he was able to walk right through that doorway.
There's the notch.
Yeah, there's the notch. So what's interesting though, it's of that T-shaped type doorway, which we see a lot throughout ancient Mesoamerica, the American Southwest, and I've drawn a correlation in my book because it was something that dawned on me when I was out in Chaco Canyon some years ago, where I was recording a video for my YouTube channel, and I'm kind of doing a walkthrough of Chaco Canyon. I got to a location where it had one of these T-shaped doorways. And as I was kind of describing it to the camera, it just hit me. And some of your viewers and listeners might think I'm a little crazy on this. You might even, Jimmy. But I'm like, wait a second. This is almost like an inversion of the T-shaped pillars that we see at Göbekli Tepe.
Mm-hmm.
So is this, a type of symbolism that has been handed down through the millennia, and we see it resurfacing in a different way here in another part of the world?
It's not a coincidence. I've noticed the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's repetitive. And I started to, just like you, when you see this enough, across cultures, across continents, right? And you see it in person, and it's repeated, and then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then you start to get the flashback. I've seen this before. I've seen this before. I've seen this before. And you're not the first, man. And I will confirm with you that I've had the same revelations. And then Hugh Newman just recently on social media posted another T-shaped doorway in Turkey, right?
Oh, great.
And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, man, I am. I'll just. I want to get back to Chaco Canyon. Here's Aramumuru. There's me. That'll give you an idea.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I just went. I did the ceremony with the shaman.
Mm-hmm.
The whole tobacco thing, and went through that. And I did have that a crazy tingle experience, but we'll ignore that for now because I'm going to pull up. I'm just going to back this up. This is just some of my stuff that I've accumulated. I'm just going to blast through this.
Sure.
This is the gate of Inky.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is 1150 BCE. Now, there it is again, right? It's just like it's everywhere around the world. And this is what you're referring to at Chaco Canyon. And so there's Jason Quitt's book. I wrote the foreword to that, and we started to have these revelations together. There's me in Karnak, right?
Right.
This is Machu Picchu. There it is again, right?
Yep.
It's just right. This is in downtown Cusco.
Yep.
And I just started to see this. This is another, right? And so I started to, right? This is the red fortress in Peru. Just incredible. Just along the side of the road, but this is a video I shot of Aramumuru to give you an idea, everybody, of the size of this. And also the back of this has a tunnel that goes to this gate that is the village has blocked off. And they did that a couple of 100 years ago. Why? People were disappearing.
Right.
People were literally disappearing.
Yeah.
This is at Pumapunku. Now we're in Bolivia, right? Now I'll stop this video right here. What do you see down here? You see that? See that right there?
Yeah, it's the same shape. Yeah, you start to notice the connections across cultures. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look here, there it is. And I this is the H blocks, right, in Pumapunku. What do you got right here?
There's another T-shaped doorway. Yeah.
And here they are in the inside of the H blocks, and they're also on the back of the H blocks. So I started to see these everywhere. And then I went over to look, there's a whole row of H blocks, right?
Yep.
And they've all got them. And so this is just another site on the backside of Pumapunku that's barely been excavated. You can see they haven't even touched it, right? There's still blocks just sitting in the dirt. But there you go, right? And if that doesn't remind you of Göbekli Tepe, I don't know what would. And so I started to photograph these portals everywhere. Look, there's another one, right?
Yep.
And I'm seeing them everywhere I go. So now this is at another site. This is at Tiwanaku. And I'm walking by myself, and I come around this block, and I'm with a friend of mine. His name's Dan. We're all venturing together. And look what I find on the back of the block.
Right in the back, there's a small one.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. And they will tell you there that Pumapunku and Tiwanaku are two different sites, two different cultures. There's no connection. Right.
Yeah, but you're seeing the symbol right there. And that's something I keep an eye out for. And those smaller ones, I have to keep a even greater eye out for. It's in my book, the one that I really key in on, even though I do talk about the T shape, are the spirals. That is a symbol that we see across cultures all over the world that we're not supposed to have had any connection with each other, but there it is. It's there in South America. It's there in ancient Egypt. It's in Ireland. It's in the American
Chaco
Southwest,
Canyon.
Chaco
Chaco Canyon.
Canyon. Yeah,
Yep.
everywhere. Yeah, Sri
Yeah,
Lanka. Yeah,
that one spot in Chaco Canyon that's up, high, and it's reverses on the cliff ledge underneath, like a ceiling part, flat part.
Yeah.
That if that isn't some reference to a Stargate and star system or something, it's definitely celestial. And it's crazy to see it and look at it. What is it that were preserving for us?
yeah.
What's the message
Well,
there?
here's the thing is, you talk to the indigenous peoples of the area, and they will tell you these symbols are representative of star people and portals. And academia just will not listen to that at all. They have their own ideas of what some of these things are. Like, they'll talk about spirals and say, well, they're migration calendars, or their symbol of waters, or migration patterns and symbol of water. And it's like, who in the world, when they're migrating, from one area to another, walks in a circle? It's like it's a great method for crime scene investigation, but not migration. Yeah, and as far as water, well, the ancient symbol for water was actually the wavy line, and we see that in cultures all over the world. The wavy line, Egypt, that was also their symbol for water. They use it as the letter N as well, but it's representative of water. But the spirals, no, they were representative of portals. They were representative of spiraling energy, power. And when we look at these ancient sites of power and those energy sources that we're talking about, that vortex energy that's welling up out of the earth. Okay, yeah, spiral pattern, but basically it's a swirl that's coming up out of the ground, right? It's almost like a whirlpool of energy. And that's the 3D representation of, but if you slice that in half and just take a slice out of it, well, that symbol's the spiral. So it makes complete sense. But for some reason, academia they don't want to listen to the indigenous people. They want to postulate their own ideas. Like, wait a second here. These are the people that actually created these symbols. Why are you not listening to them? Why do you think you know better? It blows my mind.
I find it so interesting to stay on your point here, that I get it when I see something in nature on a cave wall, a bull, right? A gazelle, a bird. I get that. The things you see in nature, but to represent something on the wall that you don't see in nature, right? A spiral, a double helix, right?
Right.
You see these things that are not, they're not, this isn't part of what is grazing out in the savannah. That's not what this is something else that's being represented here. And you can't easily dismiss it as, oh, that's a grazing pattern. That was a walk that they took. That was a pattern that it was a spiritual walk to the gods. These very simplistic views of what is going on. No, when you see something that is not represented in nature, but carved into a wall, when you've got better stuff to do with your time.
Yeah.
Right? Like surviving. Exactly. Yeah.
One of the best examples that I've seen now, I love Chaco Canyon. I've been there several times, and there were some amazing petroglyphs there. But Jennifer and I were just out at Petroglyph National Monument there near Albuquerque. We're at Boca Negra, and this was on our way out to Conscious Life Expo this past year. And we, climbed the mesa and all that, and there's some really wonderful petroglyphs of the spirals, also of star people and this sort of thing. They're all kind of scattered around the mesa, and there's actually a stone circle on top there, which was wonderful. But as we were driving out, Jennifer noticed on the side of the canyon wall, hey, there's a spiral up there. Now, this was the end of the day. We had to leave. The Park Service was kind of shooing us out. We came back the next morning so I could go up there and get some photos. But as I'm walking along the trail, and it's a little climb up, just like some short stairs or whatever. And as I'm entering that little passage, look down, and off to the right-hand side, there's this wonderful depiction of star people. And literally one of them is a star, and there's a face in it, right? So star person, obviously. As you keep going up, right in the middle is a petroglyph of a snake. Again, our ancient symbol of energy. And then right at the very top, there's your spiral, there's your portal. And it's like, this is just very plainly written here. Star people using the energy to enter the portal. Boom, done. You know, it doesn't get more simple than that.
The indigenous cultures of North America definitely saved for us origin stories.
Yes.
You know, and you just and if you just step back and really take it in, these petroglyphs, it's a story, and they are telling us in a very easily read thing. And the orthodox academics out there, right? With this, they got to stay in their lane.
Yeah,
they're not going anywhere with it. Do you remember? You and I did a conference. I can't remember the conference, but it was in Laughlin. And
UFO Mega Conference. Yeah,
is that what it was? Okay,
that was it. Yeah, in Laughlin.
I've done a few there. Okay, but you and I did that conference there. Right next, like 4 miles away is the Grapevine petroglyphs.
Yeah.
And have you been there?
I have not, no, but I'm familiar. Yeah.
It's the most petroglyphs at a single site in North America. They have 700 petroglyphs in this little area. And what's crazy is unguarded, unmonitored.
Wow.
You just pull off the freeway. There's a little parking lot there, and that's for something else. That's not even part of this. But anyway, so you walk up, and this origin story is plainly laid out.
Yeah.
And I'm there with a group of people, and we're looking. I'm just like, all right, I see. Okay, I got to figure this out. There's something going on. Well, anyway, so we go. I'm following the line of the petroglyphs. We go across the way. We climb up there. There's a cave, and we go in the cave. And at the top of this cave, it's like 30 feet high, 20 feet high, 30 feet high, is this giant petroglyph. It's probably 3 feet by 3 feet square. And this is what it is. It's a stick man standing like this on this line, and below it is water. It's wavy lines, like you mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah.
So he's standing like on a boat on water, holding out his hands. And in one hand, okay, you can't see my hands here, but okay, so this hand, it's a cross. He's holding a cross. And in this hand, he's holding a ball on water. Now, you're like, now what? It's like, what is it? Now they're saying something, right? That it's clear that, and it's 30 feet high, by the way, in this cave. It's like way up there, and it's big, and it's beautiful. Okay, so then you go outside of the cave, and Mike, I'll show you the pictures.
Yeah, it'd be great.
One of the pictures is of, I'm going to just say it, man, whatever. You guys can think what you want. A friggin' astronaut. And it's a dude. And he's got a helmet with a round circle in the front, antenna coming off of that. And he's standing there, and that's about 4 feet high, maybe 2 feet wide. And it's right there. Next to it is, I'm going to just say it. There's no other way to look at it. It's a cell with mitochondria in it. And it's this round circle, and you just look and you're like, dude, that's biology 101. I took that class in 8th grade, right? 9th grade. And that's there. And then what is next to that? A giant 4 foot tall double helix.
Nice.
All the way down. So now you've got DNA, a cell, and a spaceman on the same rock. And he's just got to back up and go, that's not in nature. That's not in nature.
Right. No, that's modern science. Yeah.
Yeah, none of that. And what is it? So I came back after that trip, and I was blown away, and I kept looking at the pictures and scratching my head. And so I look it up. Nobody knows. Nobody knows anything about that site. All of the archaeology that's been done there. Okay, the Mojave Indians, right? It's the Mojave Desert, named after the Mojave Indians. The Mojave Indians say that was already there when we got here. It's not us.
Yeah, and you find that in a lot of locations where you have the indigenous tribes saying these things were already here. Kind of like Saxay woman, where they're the descendants of the Incans are saying, no, those things were there. We just added on top of it. You find that all over the place. Out in Egypt, the pyramids were already there. We repurposed them.
Yeah. When I wanted to pop this up because you brought up Göbekli Tepe.
Oh, by the way, Dodgers won 4-2.
4-2. Yep. Thank you for that update. It's buried underneath this pillar here. The Dodgers. So this is in Tiwanaku. So I'm walking down. I'm by myself, and I just stopped, and I went, "What?" It's Göbekli Tepe. Look, it's
it's
right?
similar nature. Yeah,
with the bell. Yeah. Again, look, this is the Sun Gate there, but look at this carving. Now, this isn't, when you look at this representation of this is not a stone lintel over a doorway. This is carved. This is the image, and it's the same image that we see in the H blocks and everything else, all the way back to Inky, right? It's absolutely, for me, confirmation that this is what Hugh Newman just posted on social media. Look at that.
Yeah. T-shaped doorway right there. I guess I missed that one because I follow this stuff.
Yeah, I do too. But it seems to me that when you have this, like I said, it's not just Mesopotamia, it's not just Egypt. It comes over to Peru. I've seen stuff like this in the United Kingdom, stuff like this in China. I just recently went up to Alaska and Canada, and I did some photography there of a couple of spots too as well. This image here from Hugh Newman is in Turkey, and I just showed you stuff in Pumapunku, which is Bolivia. All the same imagery.
Yeah,
and it just seems like they're showing it to us that they had the recipe for what was going on. They locked down the energy, and then that's done. Amaru Muru in Peru is like one of the best examples that I can give. And these doorways that go to nowhere, they are represented in every culture, on every continent, everywhere on planet Earth. Everybody's got a doorway that goes to nowhere.
Yeah, there's not enough credit given to how interconnected these different cultures were. And, academia is kind of slowly, picking that up. So there was just recently here some research that was done that actually did link Easter Island to the mainland South America before the English colonists came through on their ships. So they were able to actually finally trace that DNA back. And so that's a 2,300 mile trip. Now, academia has been so resistant to say that the ancient world could travel these great distances, but it's like, you got 2,300 miles here. So if they were able to do that, they were definitely able to do this in other places around the world where they were able to travel these greater distances. And you got to also think, thousands of years ago, the sea level was lower, so they didn't necessarily have to travel as far because there was more land around. We just haven't. Academia has not been giving the ancient world enough credit for doing some of these things, like being able to travel around the world and knowing of just even basic things like knowing Antarctica existed. Yeah, they knew it. We find it in some of the ancient maps, and it's I think it's like the arrogance of the Europeans. Like, well, if the Europeans weren't talking about it, then it must not have existed. No, it existed. Just other cultures are talking about it, not necessarily Europeans.
Now, let's end on this. It's like the $1 million question.
Yeah.
We have the imagery from Roland Emmerich and Stargate, the movie.
Yeah.
Going into all of the excellent 100 different versions of TV series that they did of that, where it's in the round.
Mm-hmm.
You and I just went through a bunch of imagery of T-shapes that again remind me of Göbekli Tepe, and now we're going back at least a minimum of 12,000 years with this kind of icon, this type of imagery, right, and what is being captured. What's the significance of that? Is shape of a concern, and in ancient cultures, do we have representations of around Stargate like with Roland Emmerich?
Well, I think that's where we, the spiraling energy. I mean, that's, basically it's a circle with the spiral in. So we see that. I think what we see in the Stargate movie and the television shows is because we always think of that tunnel. We see it in Star Wars when, with hyperspace. We see it with like the movie Contact. So that's the way our science fiction is really depicted, because that's, you go back to the Einstein-Rosen Bridge, folding over to, space and time, and then connecting it with a tunnel. So that's the image that we've come up with. But I think the film, if we're staying on pop culture here, that actually really depicted it quite well was, okay, not necessarily like a circle hanging out there in space that you walk through, right? Interstellar showed that, in three-dimensional space, it was a sphere.
It was a sphere.
It was a sphere. So think about this. A lot of people talk about, like out in the wilderness and things like this, giant balls of light, or even like some of these Sasquatch sightings that people are thinking are interdimensional. Sometimes they're seen with these giant balls of light. Well, are those giant balls of light actually the portal or the Stargate through which some of these beings and entities are moving through to get into our world? Are they not? Because a lot of people, believe that, the orbs are like spirits and things like that. Well, maybe it's not that. Maybe this is actually the mode of transportation that they're using. They just walk into that and boom, they're zipping off somewhere.
Like a 0 point. And I always like the way that Kip Thorne represented that in Interstellar.
Yeah.
Because it's also very similar to, if you think about in the movie Contact, Jodie Foster was dropped into a point.
Right. Yeah.
Right? To a point, not into a tunnel, to a point.
To a point.
And that's what was represented there in Interstellar, was just a small little ball. It was a sphere that you pierce, and that's, you're going into the I don't want to say singularity, but to give you the concept of, you're just entering a point. And that's it to suggest that the orbs or these lighted energy sources that we see out there could be just that. I think that's a really good point to make.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that people generally aren't considering enough, because we've, okay, sure, some of it's ball lightning, but you have like these plasma events that, like earthquake lights, where it's like, okay, what's going on here? It's some sort of plasma. What is that? What is that going to do? It's another type of state of matter that we don't really talk about. But yeah, instead of thinking of it as, on this whole kind of woo-woo, spiritual, they're ghosts or whatever, maybe this is something that's actually more significant that we're not actually considering. So yeah, it could really be that mode of transportation.
Okay, we'll end on this. Lots of conspiracy behind Switzerland and CERN.
Yeah.
And the possibility, I've heard all the crazy stuff, right? And so have you,
Right.
that they have opened up a portal and they've been letting, it was an accident, and they let stuff slip through, stuff that might not be that friendly. And it was done quite by accident, but now they have the ability to do this. Do you think there is, where there's smoke, there's fire?
Yeah, I mean, we might not know for certain what is coming out of there, but yeah, I think there's been enough stories and enough rumors that, yeah, where there's smoke, there's fire. There is something that's going on there, but we're even seeing that now in our own backyard. Just recently here in South Dakota, they excavated out some of these old gold mines, made them much larger, so that they could do neutrino research 800 miles between Chicago and South Dakota through the Earth, shooting neutrinos. Now, back in Antarctica a few years back, they had in their neutrino research down there, and this is a scientific peer-reviewed paper that said, oh, hey, yeah, there were neutrinos that were coming up out of the Earth without a source, which to us is indicative of a parallel universe running in reverse time. So now they've built this monstrosity here in the United States, shooting stuff 800 miles through the Earth. That, okay, are they trying to open up the parallel universe here? What are they trying to do? So yeah, there's things that our scientific community that they're doing that could very well be opening some of this stuff up that they're not telling us about.
Yeah, time traveling neutrinos. That was a good story.
Yeah,
that was a good story. And you know, when something like that breaks, and you really have to pay attention to the press releases to catch some of this stuff, because most of it you only see once.
Yeah.
Right? The press release comes out, they talk about, you know, time traveling neutrinos, right? Parallel universe neutrino. That's a crazy story. That's crazy AF.
Yeah.
Right?
It is. You know, New Scientist is the one that broke that some years back. And then you had, because some of the more tabloid-esque outlets picked up on it, you had other bigger outlets like Forbes and some of the others kind of just, you know, poo-pooing the whole thing. Oh yeah, they're nuts or crazy. It's, you know, don't believe this sort of thing. But then it was a few years after that where they finally published the, you know, the peer-reviewed paper, and still it was like they still weren't grabbing onto that. They still weren't acknowledging it. Like Forbes went back to update their article just to tweak it and say, well, yeah, this was published, but we still don't believe it. It's like,
yeah, I had a physicist on. I don't want to embarrass him. He was great. Live from CERN. I have him back on the show. It was great, and he was awesome. From CERN, right? Mm-hmm. From one of the boardrooms there at CERN. And I think the other funny part was he worked. He can choose his own schedule, but he chooses to work at night. So I had him on here. I think it was like 5 a.m. in Switzerland, right? And he's on the show. Anyway, I said, dude, okay, now just tell me the truth. What's going on? He goes, Jimmy, listen, man, this is a big place. And I've been looking for the Illuminati room. I haven't found it yet. And I said, so you're aware? And he goes, man, you know, we all talk about that stuff. You know, we read about it just like you do, you know, and all the stories. But I haven't seen it yet. I said, what about black holes? Well, you know, what about antimatter? Well, you know, yes, but it's not on the scale that you think of, that you think it is. And so when I hear it like that, I immediately, and it's just the way my brain works, I flip that 180 degrees. Mm-hmm. It's bigger than you think.
Right.
It's crazier than you think. You can't downplay these very, very, very significant subjects like antimatter, like portals, like wormholes and black holes. And we have to remember one thing about CERN is that they are crashing stuff together at the speed of light because they want to see what happens.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's kind of what it comes down to. We just want to see what happens. Just
that's it. That's it. Together. Yeah. At the speed of light.
Kind of like, you know, when I was a kid, I did that with my Matchbox cars. But they're doing it with atoms. You know?
Thank you so much, Mike. Now we're going to be hanging out at Conscious Life Expo. What are you going to be speaking about this year? Oh, also, you're going to be on one of my panels, man.
Yeah. I'm on the was it the ancient technology panel or ancient civilization, whichever one that is on Friday night.
I think I call that Ancient Secrets.
Ancient Secrets. There you go. Yeah, I'm going to be on that panel, which is great. Well, I'm going to be talking about this Stargates and Portals, basically featuring the new book, Portals to the Stars. Which Jimmy, you again, I told you before we started that you are the first interview that I've done for this book. It comes out tomorrow, the 29th. So the pre-order is available in some places. So I'll be talking about that, and also I'll be revisiting my time travel book in one of my presentations there, Travels Through Time. So
I can't wait to see you, my man. We're gonna have a great time.
Yes,
Mike Ricksecker, thank you, my brother. Safe travels out here to Los Angeles, and I'll see you in about 2 months.
Absolutely. See you then.
Mike Ricksecker, thank you so much, Mike. Mike's links are below, and we also have them over on the website and throughout social media. What a great conversation tonight, and an excellent way to start out the week here at Fade to Black. I want to remind everybody what's going on tonight. Mike was with us. Tomorrow night, author Kevin J. Anderson is here. We're going to be talking about science fiction into reality and his work on Star Wars and Dune Part 1 and Part 2. Wednesday night, it is Halloween week. Jim Harold is here once again this year. Halloween Campfire. That is Wednesday night. And then Thursday night, Judica Isles is with us. And it's our Fade to Black Halloween special. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss that. We got a great week coming up. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you, Mike Ricksecker. But for now, until tomorrow, all I've got is go back Lee Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.